Will come to order. Meeting is being televised and recorded. Is anyone in the audience recording?
There is no audience.
They're right there, saying they're not there. Adam, why don't you explain about the Outback?
Okay. So Outback is here tonight. They are requesting the waiver from the public hearing and then the site plan approval. As I told you at the last meeting, there was a clerical error in advertising the hearing. I had originally advised Jamie Butler, who is from Bloomin' Brands, who's not here this evening, is the parent company for Outback, that in the situation that they're in, I would generally advise people to apply for the waiver. But because he was applying to the zoning board, he felt that he'd rather advertise and go through the full public hearing process because they had the time to do it. Again, there was an error, so they went to the zoning board on Thursday, and in conversations with Mr. LaPointe, who's from Colvest Group, who represents the owner, and Mr. Butler from Bloomin' Brands, I advised them that they still have the option to apply for the waiver because of election and town meeting. They wouldn't be before this board again for a full public hearing until May 14th. So if the board chooses tonight to require them to do that, we still have the opportunity to advertise. So they took the opportunity to request the waiver from the hearing based on the circumstances at the site, and I guess it's in front of you folks now.
I personally don't have any problem with waiving the public hearing.
No.
There's no neighbors. It's a similar type use of everything else that's in that area and what was there. I don't know how the rest of the members feel.
There's no problem with waiving it, no.
I don't have a problem with it.
Jonathan? Wendy?
No issues.
Okay.
So I guess
So we have a motion to waive the public hearing
I'll make that.
for Outback Steakhouse. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote.
Thank you.
So, no, would you like an explanation of what we're doing on site?
yes, because they still have to approve you.
Yeah.
This is like it was, but it isn't.
Get out
I
this
thought we were
evening.
done. Typically after the vote, we're done. Yeah. I'll give you wanna
Sure.
give the
It's a
presentation?
laser pointer, because
Wow.
if you get too close to that screen, it will move stuff around because it's a touch screen.
Oh, I love it. Do I get to keep it?
No.
It's only $10. You can have it.
This is obviously the former Bickford site, former Abdow site. The hotel is up in the corner. The tenant is leasing the area you see prominently on the site plan. We will demolish the former Bickford's building, and they are building a new, you said it was about 5,700 square foot, so it's a little bit smaller. A new Outback restaurant, generally in the same footprint. The Outback, unlike the Bickfords or the Abdows before it, will have a patio, which is completely fenced in and accessible from the building itself, only from the building itself. So they'll have patio seating on the outside. We are here because, and went to the Zoning Board of Appeals because Outback wanted to change the striping arrangement on the site to eliminate the dead-end aisles and to accommodate the slight change. If you remember, the Bickfords had this huge sidewalk on two sides. To eliminate that, so the striping necessitated a Zoning Board of Appeals application, which triggered a site plan approval. The parking count actually increases slightly.
We went from an existing 62 parking. By striping more efficiently, we're up to 87. Actually, 89 is wrong. It's 87 parking spaces.
What's required in that?
102.
102.
For the restaurant, there's another, what, 90 some odd
103 parking spaces for the hotel.
also available for the hotel that aren't,
And not shown.
although
on
it is the same site, Outback isn't
Right.
considering that. We have water, sewer, gas, and storm connections already on site. We're using the same driveways that are there today, so there is no DOT access permit required. We've already talked to them. We're not in the wetlands or wetlands buffer area, so we didn't trigger any of that review. There is a grease trap on site in front. Outback is proposing a much larger, I think a 3,500.
35 by code, which is
All right,
required
there's
by
a
code.
1,000-gallon grease trap in front. They're proposing a 3,500-gallon grease trap on this side. Generally, we think it's a marvelous improvement to the site, and as the
As a
property
replacement
owner,
for
we're
what's there
overjoyed,
now,
so.
I think it is.
Is any peer review required on this?
Required? No. But peer review is technically not required on anything. It's up to sort of a judgment call. The board could ask for a peer review. The building inspector has looked at the striping plan. He has an engineering background. They're not doing any more than milling the surface, as I'm to understand. So there's no breaking into the under. The aisles meet the code or the bylaws. So, you know, the relief from the parking
The
requirement.
24-foot turning aisles.
Yes,
Now, the parking, again, you mentioned something. How many spaces are required? 87?
106.
106, and you have 87?
Yes.
87, and they require 102. They require 102 because they added the patio
Outside.
seating, the outside seating, which is seasonal.
So you don't have enough parking?
No.
Correct, but the zoning board gave them the special permit for the parking reduction.
the old, the last restaurant was used there was a TJ Seafood.
Yeah.
Had 172 seats for the 62 parking spaces that were there.
And you
So,
go 199.
The ratio, we have more parking per seat what the TJ Seafood had as a ratio.
And in the front of the building, where the entrance is, right there, Adam,
Yeah,
to the back end of the parking spaces, that's 24 feet too?
yes. That's more actually because that's existing. But the back parking is all 24.
I would say this is the
This is
one
all
that's
24. Yes. In the front is more because we're maintaining the curb on either side. It's like almost 28 feet.
Okay.
And are they gonna be, the required amount, which is I believe 4 handicap spaces? I'm only
We only
seeing
require 2
3.
by code. We were showing 2.
I
It's
think
1
this
to
should,
25. Handicap spaces 1 to 25, that's ADAG, access board. Parking.
so when you should have 100, why don't
Should
you
have
put
4.
4 spaces in handicap?
It can be done. One van accessible,
1 being
3.
accessible, 3,
Okay.
yeah, with access lanes.
Plan here seems to show 4.
I thought it did, but yeah, that's
Well, let's do this.
Actually, we do have 4. I'm sorry, I
okay,
apologize.
great.
We do have 4.
One of the trees,
One,
I
one, one of
think,
them, one of them being van.
is
and
covered by
other-
the tree.
So
right?
888, 858.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
1,
Yeah,
2,
exactly.
3, 4.
What are you gonna do for lighting and landscaping?
The lighting remains the same. There's 3 site lights on site. I think that one of which a truck took down, but it's behind the building now. We'll put it back. There's 2 double head poles, 1 single head pole at the back of the site. The landscaping itself increases. The pervious surface increases over what's there today. So
It's a smaller building. But we are going to be providing nice landscape around the foundation. We're going to add 2 trees actually. You see at the corner up top with a lot of shrubberies and some daylilies at the entrance, things of that sort.
Do you have that on print
Yeah.
here tonight?
It's actually part of the submission
All right.
provided to them.
So it's in the packet.
Yeah.
And the landscaped areas will be irrigated.
I don't see those 4 spaces.
So is this side elevation right here what you would see from Route 20 or Route 12? Right?
This is what you see from Southbridge, Route
And
12.
that's so front
This is the
entrance.
main building. This is the entrance. Looking this way.
Very good. Thank you.
Will you point out on one of those the 4 handicap spaces? I see the 2 right in the first right-hand corner.
If you go back,
Yep. I'm just
One van
I just wanted to
accessible.
blow it up because it's a little bit easier to see.
so it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
They're
Oh,
very,
okay. All right,
And there's a lane on each side.
yeah, they're very clear
Yes.
on this black and white print.
because this
And will
is,
there be some kind of a concrete berm that stops the vehicle from parking so that the bumpers overhang?
Wheel stop, we have
The
wheel stop,
walkway?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
There's actually,
great.
yeah, we do have wheel stops.
Okay.
Because the sidewalk right against the curb, so you don't want the cars to actually pull over, so no,
Right, then
we,
there won't be maneuverability. on the
exactly,
curb.
no, we do have wheel stops.
drainage remains the same.
Yes.
Does that meet current standards?
It does not. But as far as stormwater management goes, this is considered a redevelopment. So they're allowed to keep the
Existing.
existing conditions because they're milling the parking lot. They're not totally rebuilding it. They're not adding impervious surface. They're actually making it better by reducing sidewalk and other impervious surface around. So they've actually
Added more
reduced the amount of runoff from unclean sources.
I think the only thing we gotta decide is whether you wanna send them to a pier or not.
I look at it as, I think the site is essentially improving over its existing condition. The building's getting smaller, the footprint for the drainage by nature of that gets even better. They're increasing the amount of parking spaces. Everything that I've seen seems, there's nothing on here that really triggers any flags for me. I think also as far as the town goes, I think this is the type of development the administration has been trying to promote. I think, you know, from my perspective, I don't think I would require a peer review, and I
Well, I agree
hope we
with
make
you.
them successful.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's nice to,
Plus it's moving along faster too.
Yeah, and it helps to enliven the area, maybe
Yeah.
do something else.
the only thing, the reason I ask that is because every other project that we've done in this town, since I've been on the board, has required a peer review. In this particular case, do I think you need it? No. As long as you guys realize that
It's
an
available. if
you're
we- if we
letting it
want
go
to.
and,
Right.
all right, what else?
I think that's
Anything
all my
else?
questions.
Any other questions by board members? No public comment?
So what are we
Do we,
looking for?
We close the, well, we don't have a public hearing, we waive it, so.
Gonna close the hearing and take a vote. No?
We don't
We have a
close the
motion,
hearing
there's no
'cause it's-
hearing. We waived the hearing.
Waive the hearing.
Just site plan approval?
Yeah.
We made that vote already. So do we have a motion to approve?
Site plan, yeah,
Make a motion to approve.
With conditions.
with the conditions, yeah. Right,
Conditions
with
as
normal
Adam
conditions.
Designate.
General conditions are abide other boards and commissions, which is a standard. Construction hours.
Eight.
We
They could be
They could be
seven.
7:30 to 5 is generally our construction hours in commercial
Will that
area.
interfere with school buses and other things on Southbridge Street?
I wouldn't
No.
believe so. I mean, I don't imagine that. I imagine if they're going to start at
Not gonna be that
7:30,
much.
they're going to be on site by 7.
7:30 to 5
Yeah.
Saturday, 7 to 12.
7 to 12 Saturday. No Sunday holiday. The construction is to be done to plan. And that's generally it.
If they, I don't think they will, but if they run into a situation where they need extra or extraordinary hours, is there an avenue to request that?
Come back to this board and request a modification.
Okay. I
So
doubt
that's
that they
indoor and
will.
outdoor?
No, that's just outdoor. That's
So
just
if they're
site.
doing work
So
inside?
yeah, so the building, that's just site work.
Okay,
So
just to be sure,
the
okay.
building permit is not, well, the exterior construction could be considered part of this, but that's an issue for the building inspector to determine because he's the enforcing officer on the site plan. But interior work
Like
is outside of the
furnishing,
jurisdiction, yeah.
I get you, okay.
You know, if you're out there doing heavy steel work at 10 o'clock at night, that's a little, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
But if you're doing finished carpentry at 8 o'clock because your opening is a week away, then you're not really causing havoc outside.
That's great.
All right, we had a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Is anything gonna happen with the building that you're in now?
The lease, I think, is up in the fall, so I'm not sure what Outback's gonna do, whether
That explains
extend
a
it
lot.
and then sublease it, or...
Yeah, it does. I was wondering why September.
That's why
was-
we're trying to get in here pretty quick.
When do you plan to start?
I'm sorry?
When do you plan to start construction?
I imagine I'll see Peter
Well, the
tomorrow
site
with
work,
a demo
we got a demo
permit.
first. These guys have to demo.
Verizon was supposed to be out there today.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It
Good luck,
took
yeah.
forever.
All
right. Actually, I should go look.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
On behalf of
Thank you.
Mr. Abdel, I thank you.
Oh, yeah?
We watch.
Fine.
Look at the chairs they got over there.
You know, we had a 7:05 hearing.
Yeah, but when you started theirs, it wasn't 7:05 yet. So that 7:05 hearing at 3 o'clock today, I received a request to continue. It says, in response to the Faith Ave hearing with the Town of Auburn Planning Board on April 23rd, 2013, Masad Family Trust is requesting a continuance of the planned meeting until late May or early June in order to give Conservation Commission enough time to receive a full filing and hold a hearing. So I will defer to the board if you wish to push this to the 25th of May or the first meeting in June, which,
Oh, June 12th.
that sounds right.
I don't have a problem with whichever one is.
No,
Yeah, June 12th.
I may be being...
I give it till June to make sure.
Yeah.
Why give it another, that gives them 2 more weeks.
Yeah,
My only question, Adam, was one of the recommendations of the Economic Development Committee that Wendy and I were on before this was for boards to try to work together on a lot of different applications, especially ones that were more complicated. I didn't know if this would be an opportunity for us to kind of work with the Conservation Commission or have any type of, I don't know, joint meeting just to make sure that we understand what they've been working on for all this period of time.
There's a couple of different ways the board can do that.
Okay.
You could, well, it gets complicated because without having a predetermined date, if you were to say continue it until we could come to a time to have a meeting with the Conservation Commission, once you do that, you have to re-advertise and re-notice all the abutters. So it's another legal ad and another notification to the abutters, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it requires some planning and there's a cost incurred. So I'm not saying that that's something that the board shouldn't do. The other thing is the planning board can go en masse to a conservation hearing.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be a posted meeting if you are only there for information gathering. If you are not participating in the hearing and you're not adjudicating your hearing at that meeting, you can all be there and you can ask questions about what conservation is doing, as long as it's not, you know, well, we think this about the subdivision as a board, or, you know, Wendy and Ron have a disagreement, so they try and, you know, debate what the merits of that curve and giving them a waiver from the required radius is. They can't do that, but you can ask questions about what conservation is doing.
Maybe you could give us a list of when those meetings are. Just my only thought is
They
that a
are-
lot of the proposed roadway that they were advocating at the last meeting would obviously have a lot of implications on Conservation Commission.
Correct.
And I wouldn't want us to approve something that
No, and
deviated from what that board had done.
correct, and to give you all an update on what
That's why we
conservation
were
did.
waiting until.
Yeah, they wanted
plenty
to
of
put a
time.
bridge over it.
Yeah.
Well, what conservation said was they applied, and Mike Scott explained that when he was here with last time, that they applied to modify everything and include the road in that modification. Conservation told them no. We're going to approve the modifications to the site that you built beyond what you were approved for, because they didn't impact the wetlands or the stormwater, but we consider the road a separate project. So go back and file a new notice of intent. So they're looking for them to wrap up the compliance portion on the wetlands on the original
Okay.
filing and file a new notice of intent on the road. So that may have grander implications on how they do the construction or what process they're required to go through, because it may kick them into the Army Corps.
All right, so we could attend the hearing, kind of.
Correct.
press
The
out
conservation
what's going on.
meets generally the day after you folks. They meet the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. So they meet tomorrow night, but I don't believe that the Massads have put together a filing for that meeting. So we can,
You could keep us posted on that.
sure, we can keep the 12th. We can go to a date uncertain and then see if conservation would be willing to hold a joint hearing. I'm going to leave that up to the board to determine how they want to act.
Adam, peer review, you said earlier when Jimmy asked, it's optional?
Well, there's a requirement.
The applicant
Well,
can decline it?
no,
or-
the applicant cannot decline it. It's optional for the board. And in situations like this Outback situation, the dance studio that had proposed to occupy the building that's now the mortgage company over on Southbridge Street across from Bob's Flooring, some of the other reuse of buildings that require site plan, this board has in the past couple of years taken an unwritten and unnecessarily said position that in an opportunity where somebody is reusing a site and requesting a waiver, the board has generally not asked for a peer review outside of if there's a change to the site or a major change to maybe traffic flow or some other aspect. So a reuse has generally not triggered a peer review from the board's point of view. It's generally new construction or major additions that have, and it's usually, I'm going to tell you, it's usually stormwater based, or if there's other serious engineering involved, that the board has historically wanted a peer review.
Okay, so if it's new, if it's brand new, we usually require.
Correct.
It's required.
Like, I don't think that it would be optional for the Herb Chambers proposal on the corner of Prospect and Route 20. I mean, that's a massive proposal. There's a lot of aspects to it. But if someone were to come in and say, we're going to rehab the Ethan Allen building, and all we're doing is pulling a building permit, but the use requires a site plan, I would probably recommend that the board not require a peer review on that, because the site exists as it exists, and they're really just doing modifications to the actual building.
Herb Chambers, have
Yes.
you, we,
That
at
is
one point, didn't we,
off
as a
at peer
board,
review.
used to vote, pick who we were gonna have, whether it was Quinn or Graves or...
Sometimes that was the board's decision. Other times it was just send it off and have a peer review.
automatically when you restart.
Correct, and what I've been doing is, in order to expedite the applications, is sending it off for peer review. Graves has an understanding with the town. We have had a contract with them in the past. They have provided us with peer review services that, in the past, I have found to be more in tune with the way that I see peer review done than some other firms. Graves designed the Herb Chambers project, so I went to VHB for a peer review for that. I spoke to the DPW director, and he gave me a couple of different names of firms. I called VHB, they had the availability to do it, and they have the plan right now and are performing the peer review.
And Quinn is the other one that we'd use.
Yes, we have used Quinn.
Well,
How
the
does
only
the-
thing, the only thing about that, Ronnie, okay, and this is what stemmed the additional people being invited in for a peer review, is during the project with Judge Jim Jr. or whatever his name is there, Paul Jim Jr. And he went for a peer review, and he was doing a peer review, and he got a price from Graves, and he got a price from 2 or 3 other.
What project was this
engineering.
for, Jim?
That was for
Those
Brook
houses
Street.
on-
Brook Street.
Off of,
Brook Street, yeah. So anyway, make a long story short, Graves was double or better than all the other people who are doing peer reviews. At that point in time, we decided to let him get another person to do the peer review, hoping it would shoot a bullet across the bow of Graves to be competitive.
I would like to speak to that a little bit, because what that he called the couple, and Quinn was about 2/3 of what Graves was. The other firm was in the same ballpark as Graves, and so he presented me with 2 quotes. I find that somewhat problematic, because in his discussions with Kevin Quinn, he left out some of the information on what he was submitting and what the extent of his project was. So Kevin was giving him a ballpark figure without seeing the plans and without having all the information. When Graves gives a quote, they give it based on having the actual application material in front of them.
You give them a scope.
Yes, I say there's a scope of what this is. They get the application material. They say, based on the materials submitted, this is what our cost is
What
going
you're
to be.
saying is, in the case of Jim, we should have said, you can select someone else, but let Adam provide him with the scope.
Well,
The
no,
same
I
as that you
provided
would.
with the scope, but he was not given the information by Paul Jem. So he didn't have all of the information to base his quote on. Not only that, but the peer review section of the rules and regs says that the only challenge to somebody, the only valid challenge to a peer review is that they're incompetent or they have a conflict of interest, not cost. Because cost is a very subjective matter. It's not an objective consideration. Additionally, the reason that Graves gets used regularly is a consistency issue. Quinn gives a very, very, very different review than Graves, and it doesn't necessarily touch on all the things that Graves does. So they're two very different styles. If the board wants to start rotating or using different, I think that the board should go through a full RFQ process, and the board should be interviewing people. If that's the way that you'd like to do it, I think
that's
that
a good idea.
I think that's a good idea, and that's not none of what you said, of course, as far as the price and the scope of the things is what I heard, and I was here at the meeting, and DeWallace was actually the one that said that, you know, we should allow another engineering company to come in at the time. And what we were told is that the other engineering companies were half what Graves was. Half. It wasn't, if you want to go back and look at the minutes, you'll see
and
it.
I'm happy to look at the minutes. You were told that by the applicant, who, in my opinion,
He had the three
had an
estimates
ulterior
there.
motive.
Oh, well, of course, everybody has an ulterior motive.
And
but,
I can look up the quotes.
Necessarily ulterior.
yeah.
But
But anyway, this is what we understood at the time, okay? And we said if in fact the other 2 companies or other 3 companies were half of what Graves was at the time, then, you know, what are we going to do as a board at that particular time? Tell the guy, no, you have to spend twice as much. That's ridiculous. If you got 3 certified engineers and they're all the same within a few bucks on one another, who cares? Use
I think we
Graves,
should bring,
okay?
I think we should bring in, maybe having a meeting where we bring them in, and you write up what you'd like, and you also get to sit with them and tell them under what format you would like it presented back to you.
That's a good idea.
Again, I think a lot of it is personality. I think a lot of it is the way that information is presented, and I'm not going to... Quinn presents the information in a similar way to Graves, but the content is shaped in a way that I find to be very different. I find Quinn's letters to be a little bit harder to digest. They're a little bit more technical. They're a little bit broader.
That's what we have to
Correct.
tell them at the meeting. We have to tell them.
But I'm not going to consistently tell somebody you have to do it this way.
No, what we want to do is ask them if they want to be an active participant that we select from.
That's
for
right.
the three.
That's
and
right.
if you do, then this is under the format by which we want it done. And if we see, based on Adam telling us that they haven't done it in the way that we've requested, then we just don't use them anymore and we add another one into the three.
But again, I think that my concern with that is it gets subjective. The way that I look at these letters and intake the information may be different from John, may be different from Wendy, may be different from Paul, etc. So it's...
Are you saying you don't want to do this?
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I don't think it's fair to a professional to say this is how you have to do your job and this is the way you have to present
And we
it
can
to us.
explain to them what we're looking for.
That's right.
And how we want it to be for you, so that you can decipher it in a, in an easy manner, and the way in which you can present it back to the board. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is, do we want to just do this on a rotating basis so that we don't have to vote on it each time which one we're going to select, and let them take care of that?
That would be my recommendation, is if you're going to come up with a list of
Three
engineers, then it should be rolling. It should go application, 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 back to the top of the list.
Or if you want to bring in a fourth person, and maybe that one of those people might better work with you. You're not going to work with the same one all the time anyways. You're going to... but this is what you have to draw up, and I think we have to make it clear to them. If you want to be one of the vendors that we use to do this type of work, that they have to do it under a certain...
I'm going to say I would prefer that the board choose a single person and go with them, because I think that if you start using multiple engineers, you run into a consistency issue amongst reviewers. Reviewers look at things differently and they produce different reviews. So if you have 3 reviewers looking at it, you're going to get 3 different reviews, 3 different level of comments, and one may be very detailed, one may be not as detailed, and one may be somewhere in between. And I think that produces a consistency issue for the board. And I think that if the board wants to go through the process, then they should interview and they should choose a singular engineer and sign a multi-year contract. And
I wouldn't
and
want
then
to sign
redo it again
any
after.
ongoing contract.
Or sign a 1-year contract and then determine after that year.
Would that contract establish pricing? How would that...
Well, the pricing is based on hours, and that's how Graves works. They base the price on an hourly rate for the different people, and each project is judged on how many hours they think that they're going to put into that review.
Now, an engineering company, okay, has already done a complete engineering status of the project. Now, the peer review company is another engineering company stating whether there's any problems that he sees.
They're looking at it for our eyes, because we're not registered engineers.
So anyway,
I understand that.
you got to be competitive. That's my bottom line, okay? Just like anything else, just like a gas station, just like any business in town, you have to be competitive, okay? I think that we're intelligent enough on this board, okay, without any extra help, okay, to decipher the the feedback we get on a peer review from Quinn as well as we have from Graves.
I'm not saying anybody's unintelligent or can't decipher it. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying it has to be Graves. I'm saying if we're going to choose an engineer, then you should choose a single engineer and use that person exclusively for a consistency of review.
I still think we should invite him in here.
Oh, and I'm suggesting that as part of the selection, you bring them in and you have an interview with them.
I'd like to see you have, you know, we use Graves, Quinn, BHB, and maybe see if you can come up with somebody else that does it too. And we can talk to all four, and then we can select three.
Well,
if you guys want to select just one, but I wouldn't want to sign a contract for any length of time with somebody.
What my proposal would be is to put an RFQ out, get anybody who chooses to answer that RFQ to answer it, give the board all of those answers. You choose the people that you would like to interview, then you bring them in and interview them, and then determine how you wish to proceed.
I think that's...
Because I'm getting the feeling that the board is unhappy with the fact that I've been soliciting peer reviews, and they wish to have a larger stake in that process. So I would like to hand over the whole process to you and let you figure out which engineer you're the most comfortable with.
Oh, well,
Okay.
you know, I have some feelings about it, but I kind of did like, in a way, that he did get them going so that the people didn't come in, and then we tell them to do the peer review. Because they may have only needed 2 meetings, and by we having to tell them on the first meeting that they go, then Adam's going to go get the peer review, then it might add a meeting on to the deal or something like that.
Can I ask a question? Have there been any similar type complaints or people that have stated that they felt that Graves...
Not to my knowledge.
Most people won't tell you that anyway. You won't get that.
I'm
If
just
you're
wondering if there were
demanded
any
to.
similar complaints, if that is the first one that we've heard.
Well, I had someone complain to me that I think Graves, from what I see, for a good part of it, is pretty thorough and brings up a lot of points. But I did have someone complain to me that they weren't responsive back to him, and you know they'd have to call a lot of times, and they didn't call, and this and that. And that's probably the only time I ever had anybody say anything. But
So it
it's
wasn't
just to
necessarily
make it so that we have a little pool to pick from, so that like Adam said, this he's already got the one going for Herb Chambers. He's got VHB doing that because.
Hey, you know
Graves
something?
is
It might be
designing
Graves
project.
back again. Who knows? I mean, who knows? I'd like the chance.
Well, we have to establish:
interview.
do we want one, or do we want 3?
Well,
I think we should interview him
I
first.
think that's
Yeah.
something that you should determine once you get
Once
the
you
RFQ
interview.
back.
That's right.
Interview him first and see what we think, and then go from there. So
And I'm just going to tell the board, it's April now. It's probably going to be July before I get an RFQ together and out.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I just
I
just
plan on
wanna-
doing it
I don't think
before
that's a
that.
problem.
okay. And I don't think it's a
why
problem
is it
either,
like that long? Yeah.
because I have 85 other things that I have to do as well as this. So putting together the actual RFQ, writing it, determining what we want, getting it advertised, and getting it out there is going to take me a little while.
Yep.
So I'm putting July out as a target, which means you're probably looking at interviews sometime August, September.
That's all right.
So I think that in the
gonna be here.
meantime, we'll let. I'm all right with Adam. If everybody else with,
I'm all right.
when they do come in, picking someone and getting it on its way. So it's already started the day the applicant comes in.
And what I will say is I think that looking at prices, the prices I'm going to request are going to be hourly rates as opposed to project prices, because that's the only real way to compare apples to apples.
Sure.
That's right. That's
The
right.
other thing is now, Adam, Graves is doing a review for Mossad.
Yes.
Now, if they had come in, and you said they hadn't completed it yet,
No, they have not.
because if Mossad came tonight, then
Correct. Yes.
we wouldn't have that.
I indicated to Jeff that Mossad had a delay and that we'd be looking for it, not for tonight necessarily.
Right. The other question, Whitney property, which is when you go down Church Street
Yep. right at the end.
right across from the light.
That is the approved site plan for Ron Bouchard.
Okay. Yeah, we did, that was quite a while
That was
ago.
08, and it's been continued under the Permitting Extension Act.
Okay. VHB for trainers.
You are
Peer review
the 24th person who's asked me about that.
I've had a few, so there must be more than 24.
I was 23.
You were 23?
Before we continue, any A&Rs or anything?
No.
Okay, new business? Any matters anyone has?
Did you guys vote on Outback, or did you just motion and second?
We voted.
No, we
voted,
motion
right?
voted.
Yeah.
Second.
Unanimous?
Yeah.
Unanimous vote.
For what day?
Oh, oh no, I'm sorry, the Mossad.
Yeah.
We never set a date for Mossad. Are we sticking with the 12th?
June 12th.
7:05?
Mm-hmm.
I think I might be in Washington.
That's all right. I'll vote twice.
Okay.
You taking a cab?
Million Man March?
I'm off for the job.
Wow. Now,
One thing on the new business, I think that I would like Adam, or whoever he designates, to establish, if it's all right with the rest of the board, to establish some kind of a program that's going to make sure that anything set forth in a site plan approval is adhered to. We've got two things going right now that are one's not so big an issue, one's a little bit bigger issue than that. One is Honda, okay, with that outcropping going into Route 20, okay? That, by admission of the attorney, by the attorney that represents Honda, okay, agreed that outcropping should be gone. We voted on a contiguous slope from one end of the property to the other, and they decided not to take that ledge out of there. The second one, of course, is the size of that building from the side. That was a little bit of a mistake there, but again, there's got to be some kind of a program or some kind of authority that goes up and visits these properties during the construction to make sure, before they're issued a final occupancy permit, etc., that the site plan approvals that we issue, and according to specifications that we've agreed to, are adhered to. And I think that every one of you should agree with what I'm saying.
I think what Jimmy's saying
Well, I
is,
think-
once they come in for site plan, we approve it.
I understand what he's
They
saying.
go for building permit. I think in the rules and regs, there was something that addresses,
No, not in the rules. The rules and regs are for subdivisions only. I've already done this. Well, I haven't done it. It's been done. The building inspector is the enforcing authority. Our current building inspector is very diligent about ensuring that what is on the site plan is what is included in the construction. The two issues that you've mentioned were previous inspectors, so we're
But is
in the
there any way
process
that
of
we could
cleaning
get?
up.
Is there any way that we could get a report before a occupancy permit is issued that in fact they have adhered to the plan, so that we know that this hasn't been swept under a rug by no fault of his own or your fault to you, but it's just the idea that it seems that
like it goes through a step process.
Yeah.
Like if there's if it's a 6-month project, there's 6 checks along the way. Yeah, just like when you get a construction loan at a bank, before you get a little bit more money, they,
Come and
just something like that they do an inspection on a regular basis to make sure that, he's going to see the site plan, and if he goes up there, he's going to know, oh wow, 60,000 isn't 18, or whatever it is.
I am not going to speak for the inspector as to whether or not he can give you a report that it meets site plan prior to occupancy. What I will say is that him issuing occupancy should signify that he is satisfied that it meets the site plan requirements.
Did he issue an
He-
occupancy permit on Honda, or was that done prior to him?
That was done prior to him.
Okay.
Can you ask them to come in, Adam? We had one time.
Well, I can ask them, but I can't require them.
Yeah, right. No, ask them. Ask. Like, was O'Brien
Yeah.
was the attorney
O'Brien
for
was the
them?
attorney, I
And
believe,
think
for that.
we
yeah,
had
for that
asked him
thing.
once to talk to him about it, once or twice.
Well, I had talked to him several times, and he finally said to me and agreed that the outcropping was not part of the original
People
site
were
plan
just
that we
coming on
sent
then,
out.
I think.
I don't think you
And-
guys had nothing to do with
Yeah, I
it.
think
was-
you
that
recall
was
it
the
where
first
the
discussion,
slope
yes.
in the front is on a
Yeah,
certain
there's a
plane,
big
and then
piece of,
it's
Six
not
right
that
on
the right,
slope,
yeah.
yeah.
consistent slope with the,
Right.
and then there was another outcropping at the entrance
Yeah, not quite
on
as
the
bad.
east,
If
most
that doesn't
easterly.
meet the site plan, how could an occupancy permit have been,
I'm not a,
Well, because they're not.
I'm just
Here's the
asking.
story. Okay, most of the inspection is done on the building, and they don't walk around every square foot of the site plan to make sure that the grades are 1-to-1 or whatever. They usually don't do all of that. So, I mean, could it slip through the hoops? Yeah.
engineer or a contractor,
Or
but
measure the
from what I
size of the
understand,
building.
isn't, if you have a piece of ledge that's being difficult, that's a pretty expensive thing, even if you have to blast.
Well,
For
the
blasting
conversations
approval.
There's
I
some
had-
different ways to take that out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the other option, I thought when we came on the board, I thought what was being discussed was extending the guardrail to make it so there wasn't a risk.
Yeah, I had a
It
conversation
was a
with
safety issue, that's why initially.
I had a
Isn't
conversation.
that where that was left though? Sorry.
That was my understanding. I had a conversation with their engineer about the ledge, and my understanding is that the majority of the ledge that remains is within the DOT layout, and DOT controls that and told them that you're not touching it at this point.
That's not true.
Do they have a letter from DOT?
I'd like to
stating
see that letter, because I'm going to tell you something. That
And,
ledge.
and I'm not saying that he said he had a letter. He said he had conversations with DOT. I don't know
Oh,
that
you
they ever
didn't
put it in
talk
writing.
to DOT.
No, I did not talk to
The,
DOT.
the engineer said that he had brought it up to
He
DOT.
said that he had had conversations with District 3 about it, and they were opposed to them doing anything. And quite honestly, when it was brought up, the building was up, and if I'm not mistaken, either open or close to open. And I believe that the Lundgrens had concerns about
The
doing
ledge
anything
going
with
under
that
the
ledge
building.
because it does. It carries off into the middle of that site. They blasted a considerable amount of ledge out of the middle of that site in order to be able to flatten it off.
But
They can
it's
take that
not,
with a
it's
hammer.
not, it's not, they could do some local jackhammering, or they could slice cut it, and then just chop on it easy, and there's a way they can get it out of there with that probably isn't a 2-day job.
Again, I was told it's in the DOT layout, and at that point, MassDOT is not willing to allow that work.
Again, I'd like to see that in writing, because I don't believe that's within the DOT layout.
Well, they have a 10-foot
right of way.
right of way on each side of the road.
Yeah, well,
That's what the
that's a
problem.
lot. That goes back a lot further than 10 feet, I can tell you.
That was, yeah, well, if it sticks out into that 10 feet.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the problems with one of my listings when I was on 120. They
What do you got,
10
nothing
feet
else?
cut
Ron?
off part of their parking lot.
Minutes of April 9th.
Did I not include the minutes in your packets?
You failed again.
Sorry. Well, I'll include them for the next meeting.
I think they were all sent out by email.
Yeah, I got them by email.
I got them by email, too.
Email.
Can we vote on email?
Yeah.
I read
Motion
it.
to approve them.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wasn't here.
We have one
An
abstain.
abstention.
One absentee.
Anything else?
I got nothing.
John? Wendy?
Wendy?
No.
Paul?
Paul?
Motion to
James.
adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you later.